Let's get it started. Let's get it started in here. Let's get it started. Let's get it started in here. Yeah.
The views expressed by J. Michael McCoy are the views of the hosts and guests of Max World Live, and not necessarily the views of Webcast One Live, its staff, its management, the cleaning crew, Dave the electric guy, the guy who cleans the skywalk, the woman who brought in the cookies, the management staff of Hubble Real Estate, the parking lot attendant at Keck Parking, the wait staff over at Miss Kitty's, the coffee crew at Frederick's, the man in the street corner willing to work for food, Rob Spearman, Max Crabb, or anyone else of sound mind. Should you be offended, provoked, intimidated, shocked, confused, or just made to think independently, log on to maxworldlive.com right now. It's your voice we want to hear in Max World. And now, live from the palatial studios of Webcast One Live, your host, J. Michael McCoy.
All right, good afternoon. 3 minutes after the hour on this, the third day of December in the Lord's year 2013. It's Max World Live here on The View from a Pew on 99.3 KTIA. Got a great panel for us today. We're going to start out, we're going to talk a little healthcare with two people that are on the cusp of healthcare. Well, I guess you're not on the cusp, Ed. You're kind of like in the middle. Ed Brown, who's the CEO of the Iowa Clinics, and a young man by the name of Caleb Roney. You've met Caleb before, and he's a budding entrepreneur, and he's got a business that he's just started here in the last couple of years called BizBuzz, and it is aimed at the healthcare industry, but it really services you, the customer. This is a tool which will help the healthcare industry understand how Obamacare and healthcare is impacting you as the customer, and then how that impacts the service providers in the healthcare industry. So, Caleb, welcome to you, and Ed Brown, welcome to you.
It's good to be back.
Thank you.
Nice to have you both here. Get right up on that microphone there, Caleb. And, of course, Tuesdays wouldn't be Tuesday without Tom Coates, and he's in the studio, too, as he has come in for this cordial conversation of Obamacare. Did you get the cordial part?
Do we have to have a cordial conversation about this disaster, Mac?
Well, here.
Many of us said this was a problem. Ed was on the show months ago saying this was going to be a problem. It has been a problem. Now, do we have to be cordial about it?
Well, I think the NSA is listening. I think I've Facebooked enough bad things about Obama that I think they're after me now.
I wouldn't be a bit surprised at that.
My dog is getting audited. So how he ever got a tax return, I'll never know. And then, of course, we're being produced by Ryan today. So, Ed, you are the CEO of the Iowa Clinics, and how big is the Iowa Clinics? I mean, tell me about the Iowa Clinics.
Sure. We're 180 providers based here in Des Moines, 150 physicians, 30 advanced care providers like nurse practitioners and PAs and such. And we have been in business since 1993. And Mac, you're
in the drooping chair?
Yeah, I don't know how you pulled this. It's almost like a joke.
The shrinking man. That's funny.
Sorry about that. We'll get you a different chair.
Yeah, but anyway, we cover specialties all the way from transplant surgery to pediatrics, about 30 different specialty areas. And we take care of about 500,000 Iowans a year.
Wow. Now, you said you started in 93.
Mm-hmm.
Was it something before that?
Yeah, there were about 26 separate offices around central Iowa that physicians who had been in practice for at least 50 years or so got together and said, healthcare is changing. We need to do something different in terms of how we practice medicine.
That was 25 years ago.
That was.
That's amazing. Do you think that you were around, did they perceive socialized healthcare, nationalized healthcare?
They knew then, if you'll recall, President Clinton was talking about reforming healthcare, that healthcare would have to change in some way.
Remember, Hillary was in charge of her own
Hillary
group
Care.
where she tried to transmit Hillary Care, which ended up allowing Newt Gingrich and the Republicans to take over the U.S. House of Representatives at that
Absolutely.
point. That was the catalyst. You remember that back then, Mac?
Yeah.
And when they came together, what they would have imagined what we have here today and the things that we're trying to deal with. But on the other hand, I think their thoughtfulness about what they needed to do and how they needed to position themselves has made us adaptable to try to deal with some of the unpleasantries that we're all having to deal with. So it's a different world as for physicians, and we happen to be a physician-owned and a physician-governed group. But we have to deal with the cards that are dealt with us, and that's what we've been doing.
Now, when you say physician-owned group, the opposite would be investors, bankers, bean counters.
Yeah, that'd be a typical stock for-profit group that you would find on Wall Street. The other one that you see out there is your community not-for-profit group. But frankly, in healthcare, there's really very little such a thing as not-for-profit anymore. So we see ourselves as a community clinic. Our responsibility is to Central Iowa and, frankly, providing the very best and highest talent of medical care providers here. And we concentrate a whole lot on making sure that from a clinical quality perspective as well as a service perspective, we're trying to look ahead and to see what it is we need to do to continue to enhance ourselves in that area.
I had a retired doctor, just retired here in the last couple of years, friend of mine, share with me that what's going on in Iowa between Unity Point, Iowa Clinics, I don't know, Mercy's just still Mercy, right? Mm-hmm. All right. And Iowa City is that you now have these groups going after young, brilliant doctors and nurses in medical school, kind of like a coach of a college basketball team goes after the best players in the high school league.
That's true.
Yeah,
that's true.
If you're a heck of a student at Iowa City, you're going to get called upon.
Yeah, if you graduate from medical school, or even if you're in medical school and you have selected what your specialty area is, once I have an idea of where you're going to residency, then at that point, I'll probably take an interest in what your career pursuit might be.
So are you a scout?
Yes, we do have scouts.
You have scouts?
Yeah.
Wow.
We will track people, what their majors will be straight out of high school.
Wow.
They are changing.
You uncovered something I had no idea about, Mac. They're recruiting like the ball team.
Yeah. But I also was told by this same doctor that there is less of an interest in getting into medicine that there was 50 years ago.
You know, I can't speak to 50 years ago, Mac. Thank you very much. But
yeah, Tom, you can speak to that. How was that?
But what I would say is that physician who's retired yearns for the independent autonomy that comes with the term professional. Mm-hmm. And as being a professional, you have complete independence about the judgments and the decisions you make in the best interest of your patients. There are other intrusions into the profession that for those who had that, they find it extremely frustrating. Now, if you talk to a young man or young woman coming out, they've never known the complete definition of that as it relates to their professional experience. So they don't find it quite as annoying.
Yeah.
And
there you go. Well said.
Yeah. We're still getting very, very bright young men and women going into the medical profession, and I think it'll remain a noble profession.
Well, let me do a quick follow-up while we're on that very subject. Ties into one of my concerns about Obamacare. We've talked about it on the earlier show.
Tom, it's the Affordable Health Care Act.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. The Unaffordable Health Care Act. The Affordable Care is an unfortunate euphemism that they're using. They've gotten off Obamacare now because they found with the polling that when people were asked about what they thought about Obamacare, they registered much higher negatives than when they used the Affordable Care Act. The irony is it's the Unaffordable Care Act.
Absolutely.
But the item that I was going to dovetail here with and ask you is, how do you see because it's going to amount to supply and demand, as any even free market system does. The supply of the doctors and the nurses and the facilities, how do you see the supply and demand coming about if we can't unshackle ourselves from this disastrous Obamacare?
Well, the supply and demand issue is going to be heightened in a couple of areas. I think rural America is going to have a real challenge finding physicians for as much of lifestyle as well as affordability reasons to want to go to small communities that have been accustomed to having physicians live and provide their professional skill there. I think that's going to be a big gap. And now the lifestyle issue behind that is once you see a diminishing number of physicians willing to go to a particularly rural community, then that means you're on call every night. You have, you're sort of glued.
The workload and the demands are greater. Therefore, it's even more of a discouragement to other young physicians wanting to start out.
Right, absolutely.
Even if the carrot is out there, come on in, we'll help pay for some of your schooling expenses. If you'll give us a 5 or 10 year commitment, that might not be enough to lure them in.
Yeah, and I mean, I was actively involved in trying to develop that. Recently, Iowa passed a program at a legislative level to support funding of physicians that located in rural areas for loan payback. There's still going to be that lifestyle issue there.
Well, Ed Brown, CEO of the Iowa Clinic, is our guest, along with Caleb Roney, who has started a health-related business called BizBuzz, and we'll get more about Caleb's business in the second part of this program. Ed, when you get out of law school, you can still go hang a shingle. Now, most folks go to a big law firm and hopefully climb to partner, and if they're washed out for whatever reason or not, then they may go hang a shingle.
Well, increasingly, Mac, with the problem with supply and demand there on the law field, big firms are not offering the job, so many of them don't have a big firm to go to, so some of them are starting up, hanging up a shingle, partnering up with another young lawyer, and that's become more the rule today than it was 20 years ago.
All right. It's the reverse, though, in the medical industry, right?
Yeah,
Very few guys come out and hang a shingle that says, I'm Doc Welby, and Marcus Welby, and I'm here serving Boone, Iowa.
The infrastructure that's needed in order to practice medicine, and depending on what your specialty is, can be quite taxing and demanding in terms of that overhead cost. So they'll seek the security of a larger organization like the Iowa Clinic or one of the larger health systems in order to, practice their profession.
Okay, the next question, I'm just nosy, and I'm a radio guy, so I can be a nosy radio guy. What's a guy, a doctor, I don't care if it's gender, male or female, what do they make when they're just out of college, out of medical school, out of residency, and they're working for the Iowa Clinics or Unity Point? Is that a $100,000 a year job? Is that a $70,000 a year job?
It depends on your specialty field, Mac. I mean, it could be for a primary care physician. It could be, and depending on the hours that you work, but let's say it's a full-time physician in primary care, you might make $150,000 to $170,000.
Okay.
And if you're in an urban area, whereas if you're a neurosurgeon coming out, I've heard salaries in the Midwest as high as $1 million.
Wow.
Now that you have to remember that guy's been in school for 27 years.
And he's really, really good.
or gal, I must say.
All right, we're going to take our first break, and what you're hearing from Ed Brown is the experience and maturity and wisdom of someone who's been in the healthcare business for a long time. And he knows it very, very well. He heads up 30 clinics?
150 physicians, about 30 advanced care providers, right. 180.
Whole bunch of people, more than a football team. When we come back, I'm going to introduce you to a young entrepreneur, barely out of, well...
I graduated in 2004. It was a couple of years back.
All right, but you're still young. But he's got this idea that may revolutionize the healthcare industry. How could he How could he revolutionize the industry? Because he wants to know what you think as a customer. Oh, unique thought. We'll come back with that live next.
If you choose to obey the power of sin, it leads to death. If you choose to obey obedience, it leads to righteousness.
Forgiveness is just the beginning of life in Christ. God wants us to live for Him now.
And because of Jesus Christ, the gospel was preached, and you and I are blessed today because of Abraham. Did you know that? We're blessed.
Experience Truth, 99.3 FM.
Yes, now your favorite programs on Webcast One Live can all be watched and listened to on any Android or Apple device. Your phone, tablet, or iPad. Yes, your favorite shows on Webcast One Live are available live or on podcast wherever you go. Let me introduce to you some of our great shows.
Shalom! Every week on Understanding the World with Rabbi David Kaufman, we'll talk about issues in the Middle East, issues related to the Jewish tradition and religious traditions in general, and keep you up to date on exactly what's going on around the world. You may know some of the story, but you haven't heard all of the story until you've heard it on Understanding the World with Rabbi David Kaufman and our special guests we have on every week.
Hey, this is Doc with Doc and Lefty. I want to tell you about our brand new time slot. It's from 6:30 to 7:30 p.m. It's on the same night, Tuesdays. We now follow Ed Fallon and the Fallon Forum on webcast1live.com. I want to tell you a little bit about our show. Our show is focused on local, state, and national, and sometimes international politics. We like to keep people updated and informed. We also have very interesting guests. So please join us every Tuesday from 6:30 to 7:30 p.m. on webcast1live.com.
So when you want to watch your favorite Webcast One program, remember, there's an app for that. You know, there's an app for that.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Get away from us, you mean old credit card. We don't have any more money. We're in trouble now. Save us! Help! Somebody save us! Somebody help! Help! Save us!
Hi, I'm Tom Coates from Consumer Credit of Des Moines. If your credit card's a little too animated, give us a call.
Hooray! We're saved! Consumer Credit! You're our hero!
Let's get it started. Let's get it started in here. Let's get it started. Let's get it started in here. Yeah.
The views expressed by J. Michael McCoy are the views of the hosts and guests of Max World Live, and not necessarily the views of Webcast One Live, its staff, its management, the cleaning crew, Dave the electric guy, the guy who cleans the skywalk, the woman who brought in the cookies, the management staff of Hubble Real Estate, the parking lot attendant at Keck Parking, the wait staff over at Miss Kitty's, the coffee crew at Frederick's, the man in the street corner willing to work for food, Rob Spearman, Max Crabb, or anyone else of sound mind. Should you be offended, provoked, intimidated, shocked, confused, or just made to think independently, log on to MaxWorldLive.com right now. It's your voice we want to hear in Max World. And now, live from the palatial studios of Webcast One Live, your host, J. Michael McCoy.
All right, 22 minutes after the hour on this third day of December in the Lord's year. No, it's not the third, it's the second. No, today is the third. My watch is behind.
Third.
All right, sorry. Third day of December in the Lord's year 2013. I'm J. Michael McCoy. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. I know you've got lots of choices of what you can listen to and watch at this time of day, and for whatever reason, you've entrusted your ears and eyes to us. And I thank you. And if you're watching or listening to this on a podcast, Man, I appreciate that. Talk about opportunity. Anything you want out there is on podcast. I don't even know if I do anything live anymore when it comes to media. But for whatever reason, you've tuned into this show, and we will work hard to earn your respect and your trust in hopes that you join us every single day here from 3 to 4 live on The View from a Pew, or you join us on podcast at webcast1live.com. Ed Brown, CEO of Iowa Clinic, is our guest. Of course, Tom Coates in the house and Ryan's producing. I want to introduce you to a young man by the name of Caleb Roney. So if you graduated in 2004 from high school, that makes you, you're like 30.
28, pretty
20,
close.
Okay, you're getting old then. But you kind of looked at this whole healthcare thing from a different angle. You saw, as an entrepreneur, an opportunity to serve the healthcare industry with what probably is the most important piece of information that they could ever get, and that's just the answer to the question, how am I doing? Tell us about your company, Biz Buzz.
Well, first off, Mac, thank you very much for the extensive build-up there. That was definitely undeserved, but
I charge $1 a word.
There you go. So, really, the way that this got started was a focus on primarily small businesses and getting feedback from their customers. So, giving their customers a voice, because most small businesses really don't know what their customers are thinking. They might send out a survey, they might do an email response survey and get 1 to 7% response. Me and my partners had developed a phone survey system to get customers feedback for business owners, and we had done that to a high degree. And we had stumbled upon doing that for a business who had an executive at Broadlawns and a physician there. Who took the survey and said, wow, that was really simple. Would you be interested in doing a beta launch here at Broadlawns? And so that started up in the past couple weeks, and we've been doing very successful over there, just giving their patients a voice to give their clinical staff an understanding of what their experience was all about when they visited their clinic.
Now, Ed, you jump in with questions anytime you want for him, okay? Because I have questions, but they can't be as good as yours. How do you know, or how do you get the information that this person was a patient? I mean, isn't there HIPAA or HIPPO or HARPO or Oprah or some law like that you can't get that?
That is a great question. So really what we're doing is we are the facilitator of this. We don't actually gather, we're not gathering the name of the patient. What we are doing is when a patient comes to Broadlawns, they're just getting informed that at the end of your visit today, within an hour, you'll receive a brief automated phone call. It's 5 questions, takes less than 60 seconds. We'd appreciate your feedback. So then we facilitate that on the whole back end. And then we provide the clinic with all of that data and with what those patients perceived about their experience so they can improve that experience.
So you personally don't handle that contact information?
Correct.
Broadlawns or Iowa Clinics or whoever it is handles that?
Correct.
Okay, so you've done this for 2 weeks. What are you finding out so far?
Well, we're finding out we're getting a great response.
Okay.
We're getting about in the ballpark of a 25% response rate. Which really satisfied with.
How is that compared to industry? I don't know.
Sure. Like if somebody's doing a survey via email or snail mail, they're killing it if they're getting maybe a 7% response.
Really?
Yeah, I think 25 is extraordinary.
Okay.
And so that's what we're doing in real time. So there's not a 2-week delay or a week delay. We're giving them the results an hour after the visit.
Are you getting in contact with them, Caleb, primarily by cell phone? Is that the contact?
That
because
is
many
the
people don't
primary.
even have landlines. So
Yep.
doing a phone survey, you've got to get to hold, and they're providing that at the front end for Broadlawns on their customer and their patient
Correct.
information.
Mhm.
So then you're using that. You're shooting them perhaps a text message that you'll be getting this, and
Actually, it's just informed by the person who checks them in. The person who checks them in informs
so that's
them
the
of the how
initial
it's going to happen.
information. They're expecting it. So when they do get the call on their cell phone and say, this is Broadlawns calling to follow up with a 5-question survey, 25% of them are taking it.
Actually, even a higher percentage than that, closer to almost 50% of the people who get the phone call are taking it. Some people decline on the front end.
Do they opt out? Do they say, no, I don't want to take a survey?
Correct.
Okay.
So that's how we end up getting the full 25%, because we're gathering.
Is this an electronic call that is made?
It's a human voice, but it's automated.
It's
so yeah,
automated.
it's not Caleb Roney on the other end of the line.
Yeah.
Hi,
That's good.
my name is Bob. Can you tell me what you had today for service at Iowa Clinics?
Mac, that is not the experience we provide.
Okay.
Come on. So we provide a better experience than that.
Okay.
Well, Caleb, let me ask you. So you have 5 questions. Tell me
Correct.
the most important question of the 5 questions you ask.
Sure. I would say the most important question is, are you likely to recommend this clinic to your friends and family? I mean, because that sums it up. If somebody had a great experience, I mean, that really answers all the other questions. So,
All right.
likely to recommend is number one.
Is that the first one you ask?
That would be the final question.
Oh, okay.
And then we have an option for them to give an open-ended, any other feedback, and then, yeah. So that's pretty much it in a nutshell.
Are you looking to set this survey up to be able to meet the government standards for
Like HCAPS or
yes, for HCAPS?
So, given how long HCAPS is, and for the listeners, HCAPS is very extensive. I think 30 plus question survey that often gets sent out around 14 days after a visit. And we're not really competing with HCAPS. We know that if we can get the patient's pulse up front,
Sure.
and that the clinic can make changes, then they're going to increase those.
Time out. You got to talk like I'm a 6-year-old. What's an HCAP?
Okay, the HCAP is is a government
don't
survey.
you act like you knew what it was either, Codes.
Hey, you said you were on top of this Affordable Care Act. Everybody knows we
I'm
have
on top of the fact that Obama lies. That's all I know.
We got 100 regulations coming out a day. Well, when one of these regulations said
I was
that
just
we
going for the
needed to take
gist.
surveys.
I wasn't interested in what the acronym
Well, I need to know what it is. What's an HCAP?
HCAPS is a survey that is mandatory for a certain percentage. I believe it's about 3,000 patients per hospital that are required. And it's a very long survey. It's a lengthy survey of over 30 questions, which you're not going to get a lot of people to take the time to fill something out like that.
But we are required, Mac, to participate in these surveys, and our performance on this survey has some economic consequences. Either one, if we don't do it, or number 2, if we don't perform satisfactorily.
And those consequences come from the federal government?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
I want to know all 5 questions. What's the first one?
So
is it specific for the service that they got?
That is something I thought about that coming in here today, and if I was, able to reveal all five questions of what they have decided upon, and I guess I feel that I could probably go forward with that. I mean, if you went into Broadlawns and took a visit, you receive and hear those same 5 questions. The first one is, was your appointment easy to set up? So they want to know how easy it was for you to set up your appointment.
Okay, next.
They want to know if your nurse used your name and greeted you utilizing your name.
That's good.
So.
Okay, next.
They want to know if their premises, were clean and conducive to you and your visit.
Okay.
And 5th one is to recommend. And
no, the 4th one.
Well, the 4th one is escaping me right now.
Okay.
So we're just going to skip to the recommend. So likely to recommend, and then the open-ended questions.
You skip 15 pages because Nancy Pelosi told us we'd figure out what was in there when we read it.
I got to ask, since we're leaving one blank, did they ask a question about the physician?
That was the question, so I apologize. Number 4 was the question about the physician. Thank you, Ed. So number 4, and that's something that we tie specifically to that Broadlawns has tied specifically to that physician. So
okay,
good for them.
But they don't know if I'm Dr. Mack and I saw Ed Patient today. I don't know what Ed said about me. I just know that a patient said this about me.
Correct. Yeah, Ed would not see those results specific to Mac McCoy.
And then you said at the end they can leave comments?
Yep, you can leave any additional comments that you'd like.
And
so,
that's recorded. That's a voice.
Yep, and we're getting a good percentage of people that do want to voice those additional comments, which is great.
And how are those comments transmitted to Broadlawns or the doctor?
At this point, there's just a button right next to the results that they can hit play and listen to those.
They can listen to the voice.
Yep.
Got a quick question, Caleb. Do you think the people that are more predisposed, the 25% that agree to participate, are they more likely to be malcontents? Are they ones that have a grudge, they have a gripe, or do you think it's representative of the other 75 as well?
I would think it's a pretty, being such a large group, 25% is a very large group.
I can tell you right now, the 25% feedback rate, it's not a malcontent-driven survey.
Okay.
And
malcontent meaning they're not happy.
Yeah, there's a certain percentage of the population that you're going to treat that maybe, whether it was something about the experience, something about the message they were given or whatever, that, those people want to give feedback because they are frustrated and they have something to say.
Okay.
When you start hitting numbers as high as 25%, you're weeding out the influence factor of the malcontent. Okay.
And that is how we really got the introduction to Broadlawns, was because they were getting less than a 1% response rate for their clinic. And so that was something to really try to get a pulse on what their patients were perceiving.
Well, it's simple and convenient.
All right, my guests today are Caleb Roney, who is a brilliant entrepreneur who has come up with a service for the healthcare industry called BizBuzz, and you just heard him describe it. We'll talk about that as we continue. Ed Brown is here, a well-versed, mature, wise healthcare provider. Now, I'm not, that's true, isn't it? That's true.
It is true. It is true. And I want to get into Obamacare a little bit more. We haven't gotten into that enough yet.
We will. He's the CEO of the Iowa Clinics, of course. That incredible voice there is the voice of Tom Coates. Ryan's producing. I'm J. Michael McCoy. If I haven't told you lately, thanks for listening. I love this job. I couldn't do it without you. We're coming back, and don't forget Right Places here on Wednesday and Thursday, nominated for the Gospel Music Entertainer Announcer of the Year. That's a pretty cool thing. I'm pretty proud to be a partner with Reich in this program every day. Right here on The View from a Pew on KTIA, Iowa.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
I'm Brian Leach, owner and general manager of Service Legends. I brought along a couple of the home comfort heroes.
Hi, I'm Tammy Wells.
I am Nick Wondershot.
I am administrative manager.
I am the senior technician
from Service Legends.
It seems like every good thing, when you feel it to the bone that it's good, there's a lot of hard work put behind it. I don't think that you can fake it and have it turn out good.
If we seem like, okay, that's just weird, it's just a furnace, why would you believe so deeply in a furnace? It's not just that, we want to show the world that you can have good service.
Yeah, it's gotta be, it's your home.
It's built into our daily trainings, it's built into our culture, that we're gonna do whatever it takes to have each client say they love us, period.
That's why we spend all the hours in the training that we do. And if we guarantee it's gonna be a good experience for you, or else it's free, what type of work do you think we're gonna do?
There is a guarantee.
Temperature selection guarantee, fixed right or it's free guarantee, comfort guarantee, best value guarantee. All of these guarantees hold us accountable to ensuring that we exceed your expectations. And if for whatever reason we'd fail and we can't make it right, we guarantee all of those guarantees with a 100% money back guarantee.
If you don't think that your technician can fix it right, are you gonna say that to a client? No.
You don't have to worry about having a technician come to your house.
We drug test, background check all of our team members. We put safe people in your home. Each and every one of our service techs, 400 hours a year in training.
You tell it the minute they walk in the door. They know what they're doing, they've done their homework, and they actually truly care about what you want.
Because at the end of the day, you're the person that makes sure I have a job.
They're gonna be listening. They're gonna wanna know what your challenges are. Then they're gonna come and give you options, and you get to choose.
If I'm there to help and I make it easy and painless, I did my job right that day.
Well, when it comes to your comfort, safety, and your family. You know, you don't necessarily go buy the most expensive, but you get the most bang for your buck.
Oh, it's worth it because there's a lot of people that will find a way to get it to work right now and then leave and then come back, charge you again, and the cycle just repeats itself. So when I'm out there looking at the furnace, I want to find why it failed today. How can we change the part today with something that you're not going to have to worry about? Is it worth changing the part today? I mean, you can put a lot of money into a furnace. I can fix parts all day. There's good job security in that for me, but is it the right thing for you?
I get a lot of the phone calls of after the technicians are there. They're just in awe. They're like, wow, you guys are great. I mean, I don't even know what to say. You guys are great. Everything you did was perfect. It was great.
Keep going though, I like this.
Just give us a try. I'm gonna take all the risk.
I've got the time to make this right. I've got the support to make it right.
Just check us out.
And if you don't see the value in what we do,
I mean, fixed right or it's free or 100% money back.
enough said.
Let's get it started. Let's get it started in here. Let's get it started. Let's get it started in here.
The views expressed by J. Michael McCoy are the views of the hosts and guests of Max World Live, and not necessarily the views of Webcast One Live, its staff, its management, the cleaning crew, Dave the electric guy, the guy who cleans the skywalk, the woman who brought in the cookies, the management staff of Hubble Real Estate, the parking lot attendant at Keck Parking, the wait staff over at Miss Kitty's, the coffee crew at Frederick's, the man in the street corner willing to work for food, Rob Spearman, Max Crabb, or anyone else of sound mind. Should you be offended, provoked, intimidated, shocked, confused, or just made to think independently, log on to MaxWorldLive.com right now. It's your voice we want to hear in Max World. And now, live from the palatial studios of Webcast One Live, your host, J. Michael McCoy.
All right, 21 minutes before the top of the hour, Salem Radio Network News, and then, of course, Michael Mudloff from Westkirk Presbyterian Church in True Blue. I want to get into Obamacare. I want to talk about bankruptcies, if they're going to rise or go down, Tom, within the healthcare bills or not bills, debt.
Yes.
But we have breaking news, and I'm interested to get all of your opinion on this. Do you know who Christina Fetters is?
No.
She is the 33-year-old woman who at age 14 brutally killed her aunt.
Then I do know, yes. Okay.
And was sent to prison for life without parole. Then the Iowa Supreme Court said, no, she can't have parole. The board of parole board was asked by her family to allow her to come home and die. She has unoperable breast cancer. She is in a hospice facility, and it was announced just about 8 minutes ago that the parole board has granted her freedom to die at home rather than in prison. Do you agree with that?
Oh, I don't know, Mac. I saw the story. I guess it hasn't tickled my interest enough for me to spend much time thinking about it.
Okay. Ed?
Well, you can't be in the healthcare profession and not have compassion for the idea of humanity having some peace in those final moments. Whether it would be in prison or at home, if it's an opportunity for a family to be around them at those final moments, I think that's the compassionate thing to do.
Caleb, any thought?
Yeah, no, I would be in agreement with Ed that it would be just at those final moments. Just being a very critical time, but just I've only heard bits and pieces of this story, and just the just really devastation that has been caused, but this woman has caused. I struggle with what decision I would make. Being in those seats.
She's very fortunate that her family asked the parole board to grant this, and her family was the victim.
Yes.
Because she killed her aunt.
I don't think there's any other way you could have done that.
Yeah, because if she had a victim's parents or somebody else that wasn't part of her family step up and say, no, I don't care where she dies. I don't care what she's dying from. She killed my mother.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right.
Well, this is going to be a landmark case.
There are people who die in prison every day.
Yeah.
That's right.
All right, let's get back to what we're talking about. And I'm curious as to whether Caleb's biz buzz at 25%, is that something that every healthcare provider should be looking at to improve their services?
I would say if you can get immediate feedback and you can respond to that, that is something that, Caleb, I think you're on the leading edge of something there, and it's a value. So yeah, I would be very much in favor of seeing people pursue that.
I can only imagine if every listener of mine right now could call a number and have Caleb's automated service ask them 5 questions about today's radio show. I don't get feedback from today's show. Oh, I might get a half a dozen emails maybe, or somebody will say something on Facebook. But if I could get 25% of my listeners to respond to today's show, oh, they liked Tom, they liked Ed, they liked Caleb, they didn't like me, they didn't like, or whatever it was, I'd be 100% better in a month.
If you're responding to your customers, you're just going to make a better product.
Okay, talk about bankruptcies. How much medical stuff drives bad credit and bankruptcies?
I don't know the percentage off the top of my head. We do pre-bankruptcy counseling. Our offices have done it for years since they started, back requiring it some years back. My sense, just my common sense, is that the percentage of bankruptcies that are already driven by medical debt, and it's a significant portion, oftentimes not the only portion, but a significant portion of the bankruptcies that are going on in this country, has to probably rise going forward, because given what I'm seeing with the Obamacare and everything else out there, I would think that the amount of debt that the individual is liable to be strapped with is going to go up. Now, when Caleb,
the what do they call the deductibles?
Well, the max out of pocket for an individual.
Well, the 2 things that I heard this morning was that not only the cost of premiums, which I hope to get into, but the amount of deductibles are going up under the mandated Obamacare, and that would go back to this area, and the fact that many people, even though they're mandated to do it, will not get Obamacare, will not get any insurance, and the younger ones that it's like Caleb's age that it's targeted at. Are going to say, I don't have it now. I'll pay the fine. It's not going to be that much in the first few years. Now, when Caleb asked me that question off the air, the thing that Ed jumped onto was another aspect, and that's the issue of some of these big health care organizations in the next few years under the new plan that we've got rolled out, themselves becoming perhaps financially insoluble. Ed, can you speak to that just a little bit?
It's a growing concern out there. There are systems that aren't weathering the change well at all, particularly more hospital-driven systems. They're losing money under Medicare. They've had reserves. They're eating up those reserves, and at some point they're going to hit a wall. Some of them that have consolidated and merged into larger systems that may encompass multiple states as well as large regions. Some of them are being managed quite effectively and have had value in that consolidation, but others have not done that so well. And they're seeing their bond ratings drop, and that is something that is going to be new to the healthcare sector, and we just have to wait to see how that plays out.
Okay. All right. I think that's a big deal, because I don't think that's on people's radar at this point. The idea that some of these big, perhaps ostensibly too big to fail, which was a term we came up with coming out of the crash of 2008, when some of the big financial institutions that were deemed by people in our government as too big to fail were subsidized by the federal government. Potentially, some of the large healthcare organizations might be viewed in the same way.
Oh, absolutely. I can tell you that recently an article was written about a national healthcare system that has annual losses today of $270 million a year. And you can't lose that kind of money. I don't care what kind of industry you're in for that long a period of time. We're not talking about GM here. We're not talking about, the large international companies. We're talking about a regional healthcare organization.
What would cause them to lose so much money, Ed? Is it simply mismanagement? What's going on there?
Well, you see a lot of adjustments of reimbursement and payment going on a federal level. You see greater competition for healthcare delivery of services on an outpatient basis versus an inpatient basis. These systems have large institutions and hospitals that some of them have been around for years and have maybe not retooled themselves to be able to compete in this new environment. But those large institutions were very expensive to build. And as a consequence, they've not written down that debt, and they're burdened with a level of debt depreciation that they can't afford to maintain.
All right, Ed Brown, CEO of Iowa Clinics, Caleb Roney from Biz, Buzz, and my own Tom Coates, along with Ryan. When we're coming back, we're going to unpack Obamacare in 8 minutes. Yeah, that's what we're going to do. We're going to make it easy for a 6-year-old like me to understand. It's next here on KTIA, Iowa.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
If Tom Coates from Consumer Credit of America was your personal webmaster, Tom would filter out all bad debt emails. If Tom was your mailman, you'd never get any debt reduction junk mail. If Tom Coates was a lineman, he'd block any phone calls offering to reduce your credit card debt.
Hi, I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of America, and we're still your best choice for credit counseling. We're local, we're accountable, and we can do more. You make the call when the time's right for you.
When it comes to competition, there really is none for Consumer Credit of America.
Get away from my Sumito credit card. We don't have any more money. We're in trouble now. Save us! Help! Somebody save us! Somebody help! Help! Save us!
Hi, I'm Tom Coates from Consumer Credit of Des Moines. If your credit card's a little too animated, give us a call.
Hooray! We're saved! Consumer Credit, you're our hero!
If you choose to obey the power of sin, it leads to death. If you choose to obey obedience, it leads to righteousness.
Forgiveness is just the beginning of life in Christ. God wants us to live for Him now.
And because of Jesus Christ, the gospel was preached, and you and I are blessed today because of Abraham. Did you know that? We're blessed.
Experience Truth, 99.3 FM.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
All right, welcome back. 10 minutes before the top of the hour, Salem Radio Network news on the Truth Network coming up next. And then, of course, Michael Mudloff, pastor from Westkirk Presbyterian Church. All right, Obamacare. Ed, let's be fair. Tell me something good about it.
They have put provisions in there that should have been put in place some time ago about pre-existing conditions. And those young men and women that are continuing education up to age 26, that they can continue to have access to their parents' insurance. Those are things that should have been dealt with a long time ago. And what I mean by pre-existing conditions, that they not be used as a hammer to prohibit you being able to get affordable health care.
Now, I just heard something I'd never heard before, Tom. I knew that I don't have any kids this age anymore, but my kids could stay on my insurance till 26. But what I heard you say is only if they're in continuing education. No?
I believe what it is they, as long as they're in college and school, they can stay.
Okay.
They can.
But there were policies already, Ed, that were written to allow for that. I mean, the private sector did provide in some cases.
In
for that.
some cases.
In some cases.
Yeah.
But Mac, let's get into it because we don't have a lot of time. What I am hearing on this, and there's many different facets to it, but one is that, okay, the site gets fixed. The site's been a disaster. The site's fixed. They can get through there now. But they get through there, and maybe you're in these millions of people and maybe tens of millions of people next year, Ed, they get your insurance canceled. So you got to look for an alternative. Then you go into the healthcare website, you go through the system, and you find out that the policy that you are looking at is one that is higher in premiums, higher in deductibles, encompassing things that you don't really care about. You're a 60-year-old woman. You don't care that they've got, prenatal and all that kind of stuff in there. But you're forced now to buy what Obama considers a premium plan, not the junk plans that were out there prior to this. And so you got fewer options. You've got higher deductibles. You've got higher premiums. And the target group that they're shooting at, they've got to have, 7-8 million young people that have been outside the insurance market. They've got to force them in. Now, they've got a fine mechanism set up, but at the outset, the fines are not significant enough to make a guy like Caleb that's out here knocking, or not Caleb per se, but somebody like Caleb in his age group that's working at a restaurant, doing some odd jobs, not making a lot of money, and he's not going to spend that kind of money on a health care premium that subsidizes a guy like you, close to 60 and got some pre-existing conditions, and you're needing some help, some support, and he's not willing to subsidize you. What's going to happen here?
Oh, but it gets even better, Tom, because Caleb here, he doesn't have to pay his premium, and he'll pay that fine. And if he does happen to come up with something, he can sign up right then. They have to let him sign up right away, and then he still has coverage. So you got it coming and going, buddy. You're okay. Now, don't get in an auto accident and get knocked out. But, we can get you signed up, okay?
I'm going to be Caleb's power of attorney.
Thanks, Mac.
Can you share with us how bad Obamacare is for the health industry? I don't want to put you in a difficult position. I really don't mean to.
Let's not focus on how bad it is for the health industry. I mean, yes, there's been reductions in payments. There's been to providers. It will destabilize the provider community in certain locations, in certain circumstances. We have yet to see that play out, but it will play out. And as that, it will probably destabilize some of our education medical education arenas too. So we have yet to see that play out. Those take years for that evolution. But I think the bigger and more important question at 50,000 feet, are we going to end up with a healthcare system that's going to find an equilibrium for themselves so that with all this chaos that you're talking about, Tom, the possibility of young people not going on, and we have basically a death spiral of imbalance of the sicker folks being in the system. There are tweaks to the system that between regulators and our elected officials that we could make to figure this out over time to make it work. If we had a functional form of government.
Right.
But we don't.
Right.
So I think really it destines the Obama plan to a high risk of failure because of this.
High risk of failure, Ed, was that the question a lot of us have. Was this strictly incompetence, or was it intentional, or some combination of both? Because many of our suspicions, mine included, is that Obama never intended for this system to be workable, to be functional, to be cogent, to be anything other than a short-term force you into a single-payer plan where the government now controls all of our health care decisions. What's your opinion on that?
Could there have been some ulterior motives and all that? They're always, the risk of that in politics is always there. And I don't want to speculate too much one way or another. Let's just say I tend to be a skeptic like you, Tom, but I also am a pragmatist, is that will not force us into a single-payer system in and of itself. What it will do is it will force us into a multi-tier system. And what I mean by that is, yes, we might have a base form of coverage out there for that, and then people will have the option, the elective choice, the freedom to buy up for other forms of coverage. If you're much a follower of what's going on in Europe, Canada, and other places, the nationalized systems all over the world are no longer affordable. They are having to adjust their systems for the very same reason. They can't afford to provide 100% coverage for everything. If you want 100% coverage, you're going to have to pay extra and you're going to have to go out and get it in the private sector. And there will be competition in the private sector, and it will have a two-tier system.
We've only got about a minute left. My last question to you is, I'm 54. When I'm 74 and I'm not bringing in money and all I'm doing is sucking Social Security and sucking this off the government, is there the likelihood that they call them death panels, but I don't want to be that dramatic. Is there a likelihood somebody somewhere will say, you know, that Mac McCoy, he's been okay and he's been a good guy, but we're not going to put $200,000 into a heart replacement for him?
I think what's going to happen out there, there'll be, I won't want to call them death panels, but there will be some very clear choices out there where it will not make sense to do a liver transplant on somebody that has a limited amount of time to really be able to have quality life after that. When you talk about heart surgery, we're doing heart surgery today on a one-day stay, and we're talking about moving to outpatient surgery.
Yeah, I know.
So, heart
Stents.
Surgery may not be the example you want to use in the future, but my point being these very complex, expensive, high-end surgery procedures, there may be some choices made there.
Ed Brown, CEO of Iowa Clinics, thank you for being here. Caleb Roney, budding entrepreneur with BizBuzz, thanks for being here. Tom, as always, appreciate spending the day with you. Ryan, thanks for producing. Thank you for listening. And I'll see you tomorrow right here live on The View from a Pew. And until we see each other again, do one thing for me, would you? Please pray.